Next up in our preseason series, College Fantasy Football Industry Influencers, is John Laub. John is one of the biggest flag bearers, one of the loudest voices you'll hear, proponents of college fantasy football out there. He and I have been playing college fantasy football for many, many years. I've had a chance to do some podcasts with John over the last few years when he was doing some things over at Fantrax, but he and I finally got a chance to sit down one-on-one and do it video style. John and I discussed some trends that he's noticed throughout the spring and summer in regards to college fantasy football drafts. We talk about players that we're most heavily invested in. We take aim at the other college fantasy football industry influencers for however hard that is for John. I was able to pull it out of him. We had a lot of fun with this. I even asked him about some of the memorabilia up on his shelf behind him. And of course, no conversation is complete without having a discussion about UConn football. And that was even a fun moment for me as well. You can find John on Twitter at GridironSkull. So go ahead and give him a follow, but I'm sure most of you are already familiar with him. So let's put a little personality behind the Gridiron Scholar himself, Mr. John Laub. I want to welcome in John Laub, the Gridiron Scholar. John, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. You and I have known one another for a while. We've never been able, even though we've done some shows, podcasts together, we've never done a video one-on-one. It's nice to have you in, and nice for a lot of our college fantasy football community to put faces to the name when we're talking about and tweeting stuff out with the college fantasy football industry. So first of all, thanks for coming in. Thanks for joining us. You could find John on Twitter at Gridiron Scholar on Twitter. Did I get that right, John?
Gridiron Skull 91.
Gridiron Skull. There you go. Got you. But he is a scholar. So let's not forget that. John, take a few minutes. You have a lot of stuff going on in fantasy football, not just college, but you do a lot in the NFL as well. Take a couple of minutes to plug whatever you have, man. Let's see what's going on.
Thanks, Joe, for having me on. We've been friends for a long time now, like over the internet. And I've
Digital
been
friends.
Your actual annual report for at least 5 or 6 years. I love it. So that's a great contribution to the CFF industry. It's a fantastic work. All of my college fantasy football, my written content is up on Fantrax. So if you want to see anything that I do, my player rankings, sleepers, player profiles, all of that is on Fantrax. Obviously, it's the #1 place to play right now in college fantasy football. And then, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time that I know of, we are doing a live college fantasy football draft. We are playing it out for the entire season, and I actually have a belt for the winner. So the winner of the Kings Classic, which is next weekend, or actually 10 days from now, August 14th, 11 great CFF analysts were kind enough to join me, including Joe's partner, Mike, who's representing the CFF site. We are drafting live. We're going to record it. It's going to be up on YouTube for everyone. All of the platforms like Periscope, you can watch for free. Kickoff to the college season is only 2 weeks after the Kings Classic. Come meet us if you're out in Ohio. But we're here to help everyone, and any newbie who's coming into the industry, come on in, watch, see how we draft. And I'm hoping in a couple years, Joe will be able to join us up in Canton.
Man, look, I'd really love to do that. The first reason why I really want to get to do it is just hang out with the guys. I think for me, the draft would be secondary. I think you guys are just going to have a blast, kind of just hanging out with everyone. And look, for you guys, that are seeing John, I know you're probably not seeing him for the first time, but even if you are, he's a big college fantasy football proponent. He's always out there waving the flag. I mean, the one thing that he and I have in common is our passion for college fantasy football, and he's doing a good thing with that Kings Classic, getting that going. So hopefully, I don't know, John, are you guys going to have a live stream going for that where folks can tune in?
Absolutely. We're going to be doing it from NFL Draft Bible. I would assume Mike's going to do something with it, but we have at least 3 or 4 people who want to be streaming and joining it with us, and it's going to be up afterwards. If you don't get to see it live, there'll be other options for you.
That's great. And, I won't be able to make it there live, but if you're streaming, I may stream your stream and make fun of everybody's picks. That might make for an interesting show. Hey, man, look, so first of all, thanks for coming in. You had the we had the privilege of having you in for 2 of the 4 best ball drafts this year. And so I know you're quite busy. You have a lot going on. First of all, I'll start there, man. I mean, you're a man of many hats. I mean, you're a teacher. You dabble in the NFL fantasy, college fantasy, man. How do you do it all? Let's start with that. That's a softball question. I mean, how do you fit all that in, man? It seems like every time you're on the clock, you've got something going on.
I am good with my time management, but I'll tell you this, if it wasn't for my fantastic wife and the kids, I could never do it. My kids tend to be independent, and I don't always know if that's a good or bad thing, but they go do their own thing. And my wife is very accommodating. She allows me to do all this. I'm not bothering her. She's doing stuff. And obviously we have family time. But, I get up early too. So my family sleeps late. And I do a lot of stuff from like 6:30 to 9:30 in the morning.
Oh, yeah, man. Look, I take it from a dad of 3. That's dad time. That's a long time there, right? So
yes.
I'm with you on that. And look, I'm with you as well. Could give a great compliment to my wife as well. And you need that in this industry if you're going to kind of pursue and do these extracurricular activities and do a lot of things like we do. So yes, a lot of credit does go to them. But when you talk about time management, before we get into the questions, this is a great question. You had a problem with time management in our last best ball draft. You were the guy that was sitting there with like on a 30-minute per pick average on a 2-hour timer. So let's kind of keep everyone in the loop. Like we call it a slow draft in theory, right, John? But there's some guys that'll give you hell if you don't make a pick in like 5 minutes, won't they? Like walk me through the moment when you realize that if you didn't get your minutes per pick to a 20-minute per pick average, that you were going to lose privilege on the sleep timer. What were you thinking when that came across?
Well, it's funny because I had 2 NFL best ball drafts, then this one started, and I was teaching summer school. So I got so lucky because I thought we were going to start in the evening, but somehow we started at a different, which is fine. Yeah. And Chris K was kind enough to tag me in the group chat. Literally, Joe, Chris didn't tag me, I would have timed out in the opening pick. I made it, I think, by like 13 minutes. And then I went to teach class because I made my first pick at like 6:30 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Then I went to teach summer school, not thinking, because I was on the background, that the draft would come back around so quick. And then I got another text. It's like, you're running out on your second. I'm like, what? So I literally had to say to my students, time out, go do some independent work. I have the emergency, you got the emergency. And then I made my second pick.
John, I have a whole new level of respect for you to put a class on hold to make a fantasy football pick. John, you just elevated to the top of the pyramid in my book, man. That's great. I love hearing that. This is what's great about having the show. These are the stories we don't get to hear about everybody on a normal basis. But man, that's yeah. Because if you would have missed your first pick, we would have probably we would have to disqualify you from all.
I would have been out.
Hey man, let's kind of get into that a little bit. You did have the privilege of getting into a couple of drafts. Thank you for participating, and then I'm sure you've probably participated in a few others, whether it mock or whether you have any other leagues going on. Some of your biggest takeaways up until this point, we're in the, draft season now. Once when you get into August, really starts ramping up, which is why we stopped at the beginning of August, because now it's all about getting content created. But in the drafts you've been able to do up until this point, what are some trends that you've noticed? Maybe just 1 or 2 trends that you've noticed in some of the drafts that you've recently done this year in college fantasy football?
There's one interesting thing I've been thinking a lot about, Joe. Are we getting better as a college fantasy football industry, or are there so many returning super seniors and transfers? I feel like the running back depth is bigger than I can remember in my 13 years. And I don't necessarily mean the top 10. The top 10, I think no matter what year we play, are all very good, strong running backs in good systems. But when you get to running back 20 and sometimes like 45, they're all pretty good. Someone might like a different coaching staff or a different scheme, but there is depth at the running back position that I don't remember. I feel real comfortable you can build, especially in a best ball like we're doing here, you can build nice depth with really solid starters, barring injuries, who could get 175 to 220 carries, including some touches in the passing game. So running backs are interesting this year to me, and I'm not exactly sure why this is happening. Is it because of last year? This transfer portal opens up opportunities for players, right? They can go someplace where they can get carries that they might not have been able to do 5 or 6 years ago. And then are we just better, all of us together, the kind of the hive mind, we read, we think, we look at more in depth, so we find more running backs maybe? I'm not sure. So I think that's very fascinating. And 2, the top level quarterbacks, the top 7. I think there's about 7. They are pushed so far up the board. Even the first one we started, I thought you could get real good value on the first 7 in the 3rd round. Joe, they're gone now by the end of the 2nd round, sometimes even the middle of the 2nd round, because I think we've seen that top 7 quarterbacks can separate themselves. And what I mean by that is score over 30 points on any given weekend.
Yeah, John, it's an interesting point because I feel the same way. I think many of us feel the same way, that running back by far, one of the deepest groups we've had. And like when we're saying deep, just to your point, quality on the board at 30 and 40, right? And so my strategy adjusted this year in drafts. In most of the leagues that I play in are 2 quarterback leagues. I did something that I rarely do. I thought quarterback was deep last year. I tried to lock up my 2 top quarterbacks as soon as I could this year because I felt I could get quality running back depth in rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so to your point, that's the one thing that I do notice. And there's some advice that I've given guys just recently with their drafts upcoming is if you can't get the heavy hitter quarterbacks early, that would be the goal. Try to get them early, try to get your top receivers early because there's value out there at receiver for sure. No doubt. Absolutely. That's a great observation. I second you with that observation. So in the drafts that you're doing, John, here's a nice fun question. It might be more of a level of your investment in a certain player. Is there a particular player out there that you have on your rosters, someone that you're predicted or someone in your rankings high where you really need them to have a big year for you? And I think the question is probably more so appropriate maybe for some of your teams because there might be a player that you're really heavily invested in. Is there one particular player that you have more share of than any, or a player that you're particularly high on, much higher than a lot of us other guys?
I'm going to give you 1 quarterback and a running back.
Perfect.
The first quarterback is Jeff Sims of Georgia Tech. I have a lot of Jeff Sims. I love the value in best ball leagues. When I'm trying to think, he's probably around the 7th or 8th round. I could be wrong. He's creeped up a little bit over the last 6 weeks, but I was getting a ton of Jeff Sims early in the year. And I just have to creep if I want him and targeting him. Yep. I have to go a little bit earlier. So I have a ton of him. And the other one is Isaiah Spiller. I'm extremely bullish on this Texas A&M offense. I think they're going to run the football. They have Haynes King, the young running back. I know there's competition in the backfield. I get that. But I do believe that Isaiah Spiller is a special running back. I think he could creep into the first round of the NFL draft. And I think this is a little bit of advantage sometimes I have when I see NFL level backs. Coaches are going to give them the ball. They're special players, right? So you can talk about a 4 or 5-star recruit who's a freshman, but when you have a junior who you want to be a 1st or 2nd round pick in the NFL because his talent is so prodigious, the coaching staff's going to give him the ball. So I love Isaiah Spiller.
Well, it's interesting point is I think there are others that feel opposite of that. And I think a lot of them have a feeling that a Shane might be a player that takes away from Isaiah Spiller. But when you look at the Jimbo Fisher's history, he has a history of riding his running back one. And when that running back one stays healthy, they usually have a big year. I would argue, my point is I love Isaiah Spiller as long as that offensive line can come together quickly, because they did have a lot of turnover from last year. But if they can rebuild that line and get chemistry on the line, I'm with you. I'm with you with Isaiah Spiller this year. I think it could be, he could have another big year this year. So here's a fun one now. Who's a player that you kind of hope? And look, we don't wish injury or anyone on anybody, but who's a fun player that you would think it would be fun if they sort of flopped this year?
Someone who I don't have any shears of.
Correct.
And it's just the way the drafts have gone. I've done 11 drafts. I don't have any of Dustin Crum. I mean, part of it is that early season schedule. Now, people talk about the Maryland game. I'm not convinced that Maryland's defense can slow down. Now, they'll probably beat Kent State because you are talking about a Big Ten program. However, I think Kent State can score. But you do have the Texas A&M game, and that's going to be a massive problem. And I don't like their early schedule, so I'm not willing to invest the first round or early second in him.
Well, you know, that's an interesting point, John, because Kent State was a team that and some of the players I saw it on early last year, because had COVID not hit, their non-conference slate was Kentucky, Alabama, Washington. I think Kentucky, Alabama, Washington, and maybe Penn State. I could be wrong. It was tough. It was like three of those four teams. And I had a conversation with someone about this earlier today. So much of your season is wrapped up in those first 4 weeks. They're so important that if you have MAC guys that have challenging non-conference schedules, you really have to survive the first 3 to 4 weeks and get into the meat of MAC schedule. Then you're set, but you have to get there. And so to your point, there always seems to be a little dip in value for me for Kent State players, because I worry about a little bit of the early season schedule. So that's a great point. John, how many fantasy leagues do you play in college? Well, I know you play in a ton. Well, actually, you know what would be a more fun question? How many leagues do you play in altogether, do you think?
So 2 years ago was 34. Last year was 28, and I'm trying to keep it under 20. That does not include best ball. So I'm thinking about 7 or 8 CFF, 11 or 12 NFL.
Do you have a teacher's binder for each one of these leagues? How the hell do you keep up with them?
I have a spreadsheet in which it has my team name. It has the website, because unfortunately there's different websites.
Yeah, sure.
And it has the waiver wire or fab date. So that on Monday, I'm like, okay, I got to do these leagues tonight. I got to do those leagues Tuesday.
Wow. How many are you going to win this year?
Well, I mean, I'm always hoping. My goal is,
come on, be brash, be bold.
I would hope for 5 or 6.
Okay.
That would be my goal.
Okay. So, all right. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the fun part. I'll start you off with an easy one. Are you a beer or cocktail guy?
I'm a beer guy.
Okay. What's your go-to?
Right now, we have a local brewery in in the New Haven area. It's the next town over, called Stony Creek. And they have a bunch of IPAs. I don't know how, but about 7 years ago, I fell in love with IPAs, and I'm just addicted to them. So I can get growlers there. You can drink some beer on the water. And of course, they have the cans in all the local stores. It's called Stony Creek.
So I think Nate in our group is also an IPA guy. So you've got something in common. You could reach out to Nate and y'all could talk IPA on your own separate IPA thread. Okay.
Yeah, it's cool.
John, do you curse? Do you swear at all?
Unfortunately, I do.
Look, this is going to go on YouTube and we can curse. So I'm not really worried about it. We're not, what's your go-to word?
Oh shit.
Oh shit. Okay. That leads perfectly into my next question, because the question I was going to ask you next was, when you think about drafting, it doesn't matter if it's college, it doesn't matter if it's NFL, but during the course of a draft, there's certain things that certain people do that annoy people during drafts, right? Do you have a pet peeve that owners do during a draft that just drive you batshit crazy?
Hit me up on Twitter. I don't mind the DM. don't shout out publicly that I'm on the clock or behind. Like, I don't mind you doing it in the DM private. I'm totally cool with that. But if you shout out like in capital letters that you are on the clock or you're late, then I get a little pet peeve. Yes.
There we go. Well, what would you do? What do you do in that? You just ignore it?
Well, I mean, I would never blast back. That's not my style. So
Right.
I would just ignore. If they did it twice, I would probably DM. I said, could you just like not shout out and DM me?
John, you're too nice. All right. So here's a fun question I've been asking all the guys. And I've got an array of answers. On the scale, I'm using the term college fantasy football expert loosely, more of an industry influencer, right? Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how you rate yourself compared to a bunch of other guys that we draft with. Have fun with this one, man. Give us
I'm always going to be humble. I'm going to say I'm an 8. Because I will say this, I have different perspectives, and it's not always a perspective that is kind of with ADP or how other people think. So there are always going to be people who disagree with how I might roster build or rank players. But I do have one unfair advantage because right now only Fantrax is the only place. So I would assume people look at my stuff. I mean, I don't know for sure, but if you're playing on Fantrax, you're probably going to see my name.
The fact that you said that you were modest and gave yourself an 8 told me all I needed to know right there, my friend. That's a good stuff right there. So here's another fun question too. We've got a lot of guys that play in the leagues, and we're going to kind of keep track. You know, I don't know if you know this, but there's 10 of us that play in all 4 leagues. So we're going to contribute to a separate side pot and kind of keep a point standings to see who is the best drafter of the bunch at the end of the year, and the number 1 guy will win the pot. So, but when you have a competition, there's number 1, there's always somebody that's got to be last, right? And so there's always somebody in the group that you're super competitive, ultra competitive with. John, if you were in that, it wouldn't matter where, let's just assume you didn't matter where you finished, but there's one guy in there that you would just want to beat. Who would be that one guy?
Oh my God. It would be Chris K. I would want to be Chris K.
Why
would it be the only reason why I say that?
Okay, perfect.
I remember when he used to talk, he had the Carson Palmer on his Twitter, right? And he compared his looks to Carson Palmer. And I just always have stuck out that he used to refer himself as like a Carson Palmer. So I guess it would just be Chris K because I remember that for some reason.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, so here's a couple of fun ones for you as well. This one's going to be I'll throw in another fun one here. UConn.
Oh,
that's your school.
Oh, right? Yeah, I got season tickets.
Is it true? I mean, look, there's a lot of realignment and stuff going on, talk within there. You got NIL, a lot of stuff going on. Any rumor to the truth that the UConn high school state championship winner in the highest classification will play the Huskies in a state championship game, and it be a good competition?
I have read those, and it would probably be, unfortunately, a good competition. The only weakness would be, I don't know if the offensive line could stand up because, in general, UConn's got some big boys. But other than that, they'd probably be a competitive game.
How many games do you think the Huskies win this year, John?
3 or 4.
Does Kevin Mensah run for 1,000 yards?
Yes, because Edsel will feed him.
Have you been able to get him in any of your drafts?
Yeah, I think I have him in 4 of the 11.
Okay, I was going to say if Mensah went unclaimed by John Laub in any of his drafts, we were going to have some serious issues, John. Okay, so here's another question, and you might have answered this one, but if you want to take a stab at somebody else, because it's very similarly worded. But who is of all the guys in the group, when you think about what goes on in that direct message thread, the thread that we have for our best ball drafts, who's the most annoying guy?
The most annoying guy?
Who's the most annoying guy?
Wow.
Have fun with this, John.
No, I will. So it's annoying because he always texts. It would be franchise KF. He's always in the DM. He's always got something going on in the DM. And sometimes when I see like 15, you know how you miss DMs because you're doing something with the family or and all of a sudden I go back and he's got like 7 of the 15 is from him, and I don't even know what they're about most of the time. I'm like,
let's be honest. Let's be honest. He's a pain in the ass, right? And when nobody gives him a thumbs up, he feels like he's got to send another message just to make sure that someone acknowledges him, right? Maybe he just needs a little bit of attention, John.
Yes, that's why I'll give him the thumbs up and move on.
I love that. This is gold. I love this. All right, so here's another good question, man. You get a night out with the guys. Your lovely wife has given you a pass to go out with the guys. You get to bring 3 guys from our draft group out with you. Okay, but you can only bring 3. Who you're taking, what you guys are doing, and where are you going, and what are you going to do?
Well, with that, so Nick Allen, who he does the CFB Winning Edge. Yep. He was kind enough to do projections for my profile. So I'd have to take Nick because I owe him a big favor. And then, I think it would be Mike Bainbridge, because you and Mike are probably the 2 that I know the longest from a college fantasy football I started chatting to first. And I know both of them would probably suffer through a UConn-Yale game with me. They might be the only ones kind enough, because I will say this. I have been saying for the state of Connecticut for years now, we played Texas Southern one year. Why is UConn playing Texas Southern? When we used to do Yale, UConn in the 80s, there was like 60,000 people in New Haven at the game. And this is the first year, at least in 20 years, that UConn Yale is playing in the fall, which I think is good for the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, and then you get one more guy. That's only 2.
Oh, and then it would be Froton, because he's from New England. Well, I know he went to Boston. He lived in Boston. I know he suffered through that too.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, so you're taking Nick out of guilt because he gave you some projections. Bainbridge can be kind of boring, but he'll definitely down some beers with you, so you're good there. And Froton's got some stories. Froton's got some stories. So there you go. You guys need to get together for a road trip when UConn plays the high school Connecticut State champion, and you guys will have a hell of a weekend. Look, John, I can't thank you enough, man. I just really wanted to have some fun with this, talk a little college fantasy football, have you in, and really give the college fantasy football community a chance to learn the personalities behind some of the industry folks that we post all of our results on there, and get to know the personalities. Look, I don't want to end it on any, I just don't want to end it like that. I mean, you could say whatever you want, but I'm going to give you a chance to kind of put a bow on it, man. Is there anything that we didn't cover, anything that you'd like to touch on? Maybe you'd like to go back and revisit. The floor is yours for a couple of minutes, man. Promote what you have and let us put a bow on this thing.
So one big hint, if you're playing CFF best ball, you have to stack, folks. You have to stack. I don't know if we talk about that enough, and I don't know if everyone did. And I'm not saying I always, because, we're going so fast doing so many. But when I ended up with Dylan Gabriel, and I don't usually get Gabriel, but he fell. I had him in the 4th round, and I thought there was value. Then I came back with Jalen Robinson. And I know I'm into this, and I've heard you say it. Michael Pratt and Deuce Watt in a best ball league, or, Holden Ahlers and CJ Johnson, where you don't have to predict when they're going to go off.
That's correct.
Those stacking in the back 10 rounds, you've got to stack late in your CFF best ball drafts.
That's a good point, John. Look, follow John on Twitter at Gridiron Skull. He's always tweeting college fantasy football, everything from school to, I don't know how you fit it all in, John. Your name is very appropriate. 2 questions. And look, he's organized the Kings Classic. It's going to be a live college fantasy football draft that's coming up, not this weekend, but the following. And you could get all the details from him. He's tweeting about it all the time. Make sure you give him a follow. He's good stuff. 2 questions before we end the night, John. I need to know, what is your favorite item up on one of those shelves up above you that I'm looking at, that everybody's been watching this whole time?
Oh, you're going to laugh. It's definitely the old school Broncos, because that's what I grew up with. I do like the UConn, the traditional helmet, but the old school Broncos is definitely the old C, that one up there.
Yeah. And then one more thing before we get out of here. It is 7:45 my time, 8:45 your time. And a lot of us know that are on the thread, that are in the group. We give you one hell of a time because you're always the first to go to bed and shut down the drafts early. Am I taking you past your bedtime right now?
No, luckily. So because I have no summer school now, and we have summer recess. So I've been up until about 11:30 for the last couple days and loving it.
Oh boy, you're going to have to recalibrate before school starts, John.
Oh, I do. I always get myself in trouble because I do that.
Well, look, man, it's been a joy and a pleasure to have you on and finally get to do a video show with you. It was light. It was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow John on Twitter. We're going to have a bunch of these guys in. We're going to knock everybody out. We're going to get them up there. One big show for you guys. But for John Laub, my name is Joe DeSalvo, and we will see you on the next show. Thanks a lot, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.